I don't know how I will survive this week, because honestly, it feels like by the end of this week, I'm going to be sat back just going, oh, there's just so much copium, just so much copium this week. I just don't know. I mean, we started off yesterday. We covered the thing from Will from Conservative Home, talking up just sort of the pre-released blog he must have written before the full results rolled in. And now, given the fact that not only have they lost Andy Street, remember that was one of the big strategies, that, oh yeah, we might lose all these councillors, but look, we kept, Tees Valley and West Midlands. They've only kept Ben Houchin. So they had this amazing balanced pillar that they were going to present, and now they're like, oh no, oh no. You've already got Suella Braverman out there just this morning during the rounds saying this. Would not surprise me if some other Conservatives might start to get a bit nervous in those regions. We've talked about, of course, them denying how much the swing was, of course, in Tees Valley. The incredibly close race that it was for that mayoralship proved that certainly at the next general election, every single vote is going to count. So get ready, because we are going to go to Conservative Home, and it appears Will, our favourite T-boy over at the Conservative Home, now appears to have accepted the fate of the Conservative Party, where he has now entitled his latest piece just "Goodbye." We have even barely begun to scratch the surface of the salt that is going to unleash from Conservative Home this week. Honestly, grab your pickaxes, get out your mining lamps, don your hard hats, because honestly, Conservative Home this week is going to become the best salt mine for so many articles this week. You just aren't prepared. You just aren't prepared for what is about to come whooshing forth upon us on so many just so many things we're about to be gifted with, possibly this week. And yet Will only yesterday was so joyful about some of these results. And yet now he's gone from this supposed high to now, I think we've lost. Let's get into this, shall we? But before we do go getting into that, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there's the Buy Me Coffee link. There's the YouTube thank you button. And of course, as always, there's the Pony Club down below as well. So thank you all for all the support you guys do show. But oh my, get ready. Strap yourselves in for this one. So readers will be familiar with Goodbye, the last episode of Blackadder Goes Forth. The episode follows Captain Blackadder's attempt to try and escape a major offensive on the Western Front by attempting to feign madness. After putting pants on his on his head and sticking pencil up his nose completely ineffectively in convincing his commanding officers, he resigns himself to his fate. Honestly, Will, what a perfectly apt metaphor for Rishi Sunak at the moment. I have to wonder, what point in the near future will we see the underpants and pencils moment. I completely agree. Maybe we've already seen it, but honestly, I think that moment is still to come. I really, really do. But he continues. And as their men now take positions for the big push, Blackadder rejects one last final cunning plan from Baldric, but admits it would have been better than his faking insanity. Well, we only got the news yesterday that Sunak had been telling people, or at least briefing people in Conservative HQ, that they were going to be part of the biggest comeback in political history. Gee, what cunning plan is Robert Jerrick cooking up for the Conservative Party? Or what plans are Oliver Drowden trying to come up with? I wait in anticipation of these plans. So back to it. After all, he confesses, who would have noticed another madman around here? The men go over the top straight into the machine gun fire, and the scene then devolves into a field of poppies, only birdsong in the background. For those of those now hot on the show's Lions Led by Donkeys version of the World War One, the sequel is rather. I prefer the Clark Senior. The sequel is rather moving, although the intimate link between the local elections isn't obvious. Such is now the slightly surreal way in which the mind works that has now sprung forth when I read all the anti-Sunak plotters have given up, accepted their fate, and just sodded off to the pub. I don't think they've given up at all. I really don't think they were. I think they were hoping for some more momentum that would then lead them to be able to get rid of Sunak. But I think they have now accepted the fate that they're going to lose, and even trying to change leader will not satisfy them. I think that is now really clear that there's no leader you could put in that can turn the ship around. And oh boy, going to have a very indulgent leadership race, especially during this time, would do them no favors. And I think that message that many of the other conservatives have been saying, please don't do that. Just no, please don't do that. Has finally seemed to have sunk in. So, as the news trickled in, though, that Ben Houchen had now clung on to his Tees Valley with a very respectable 12.3% lead, even though it had a 19% swing against him, the rebels seem to have now circulated their drinking plans to hacks now waiting for the big push was still on. Even as he called all his careful craftsmanship, Andrew Jenkins did admit that it was unlikely that letters would go in to oust Sunak. It's very unlikely, but of course, remember, they've lost Andy Street. I wonder if this was written to reflect that. I don't know. Maybe this will just reflect the attitude that we get to see. We get to see Will like writing this. Well, we may have lost all these councillors, but you know what? I think we're gonna do quite well. And now we have almost the PCers seeming to accept their fate upon this. It's going to be an interesting week. Going to be a very interesting week. Lots of highs and lows definitely coming around on this. So for much of yesterday, CCHQ had seemingly done a very different job in expectation management. 473 lost councillors were now in line with expectations, if at the very higher end. Cabinet ministers were now unlucky enough to be stuck on the media round, at least, had Harlow to try and seize onto the argument, but all was not well going Keir Starmer's way. Could those rumours coming out of Bromley now be really true? And of course, we know, Khan has now won his third term as Labour I can't even say it. Labour Mayor, of course, of London. This now really quite interesting results, because all the areas where the Conservatives were predicting that they would win, especially on the back of the anti-ULEZ stuff, now seems to have increased the Labour vote in those areas. I thought we were all against ULEZ. Apparently not. But Richard Holden tried with his best poker face as he suggested that these results were, quote, typical for a government midterm. Yeah, typical for a government midterm. Such disastrous results. Bearing in mind that just a couple of days ago they were saying, no, we got the next general election in the bag. These local election results are going to sort of prove that the polls are wrong, and that we can go on to a fantastic general election victory. That's what they were saying. That's what they were saying prior to these local elections. But there you go. Anyway, leaving aside, this is the very same line that had been trotted out for the last 2 years. One could almost squint hard enough, see his logic. These were, of course, last contested back in 2021 during Johnson's vaccine bouse, the pro bono publico or no bloody Pinocchio. Only a 9% lead. Yeah, even with a few bright spots, Houchin managed to cling on. Labour losing Oldham, Gosforth going Tory really cannot be fooled. This is not midterm. These results are not typical. I'm glad at least he's admitting that. We are now hurtling towards a general election defeat like Thelma and Louise. For those in the number 10 bunker, this should be their downfall moment. And if Nigel Farage returns, we could be on track for Canada 1993. I hope Farage returns well. I really hope he does, because I will tell you this now. If Farage returns, that is going to drag away more votes from the Conservatives. And it is going to be, beautiful. It is going to be so beautiful if Farage returns. And honestly, will he return? Will he not? What's Farage got to lose? I mean, there is the argument some people are putting forward that Farage doesn't really want to win because it might, damage his reputation. But honestly, if Farage runs and basically says, look, I am running not to win. I don't care if I win my seat or not, but if he says, I'm running, I'm in the race here because I want to see the Tories lose. I want to show them that their direction, everything they have been doing wrong, and that a vote for reform proves that, quote, the wacky sort of nonsense that Farage and co want is the right direction. He could do that. That is a type of campaign he could run, and it would sort of still preserve his reputation. But we'll see what happens. So, for any foreigner, of course, weird enough to care, our local elections must seem very bizarre. Once a year, we stage now a patchwork of national opinion polls, where wherever one does in their best particular area gets the honorary and temporarily managing of bin collections. I think that's a very downplayed version of local politics, Will, there, but okay, if that's the opinion you have on local councillors, I'm pretty sure there'd be a lot of Conservative councillors that would disagree on that, but there you go. So, as hard as our Tory office holders work, our system of local government is a bit confusing, underpowered, and bankrupt. It cannot stagger on for long. Why is it so bankrupt, Will? I mean, it's not like your party's been overseeing all of that, and if it is underpowered, could have empowered these the not only local councils but more regional mayors. The possibilities when you're in power, Will, are you can do a lot of stuff, and your party has been the one in power. Then it seems constantly, because your party has been in power, you've been constantly infighting because you can't actually agree a direction on what you wanted to do. Brexit was the worst decision the Conservative Party ever made. But hey, there you go. We could go on. But back to it. But If we insist on going through this state-sponsored MRP poll, we should treat it honestly. So I repeat, these elections have only confirmed that the Conservatives are heading for the electoral equivalent of the Kubik's asteroid impact, except this time 1 or 2 dinosaurs might survive. Ignore the vote shares, Holden's comical alley routine, and Sunak's desperate smiles. Angry ex-councillors can take some comfort in knowing that many MPs will soon be joining them at the job centre. Although, to be fair, most councillors do actually have jobs that, but there you go. Most of them, councillors are actually retirees, but, there you go. We can get into the whole debate about why councillors should be paid, etc., etc. But, and maybe another time. That's certainly another video topic. And I think we've already done that before. But anyway, never mind. So back to it. So the Conservatives lost everywhere. Reddick, Thurrock, Basildon, Rushmore, Dorset, Hartlepool. The outcome was the same. Red or blue wall, left or right, complete or clueless. The voters are now just sick of us. They want us out. Rearranging the Titanic's deck chairs will not change the smidge. That we only came out 117 votes ahead of Reform UK in Blackpool South was allowed to at least obscure the fact that we suffered the 3rd largest swing in post-war history. It was more than double than what was required for a Labour majority. Houchen's success overshadowed the losses in the East Midlands and, of course, North Yorkshire, areas where most MPs are Conservatives, including one Rishi Sunak. It would be so hilarious if Rishi Sunak loses his seat. It would honestly be so hilarious. Like, hey, given the fact that we've had these swings, it's not beyond the realms of possibility, but that could happen, We've often talked about having many a Portillo moment in 1997 where Michael Portillo was going to be the continuing face of the party, after this particular general election. And then he lost. And everyone was like, oh my, Michael Portillo's lost his seat. And that was one of the many shocks that would continue. I think we're going to see the same. I think we're going to see many Tory MPs lose their seat come general election night. And hopefully, if there is any real justice, Rishi Sunak will be one of them. But we'll see what happens. So, all that was, of course, before the West Midlands results. So he is going to be mentioning the West Midlands result. I wonder if this is what prompted Will to sort of really write this. But here you go. So, I have immense respect for Andy Street. He's a very lovely man who worked tirelessly for his region. The swing against him was lower than that against Houchen. But his excruciating loss is a sign that enthusiasm or trying to distance yourself from Sunak cannot stop the tidal wave. That's very true. I think, if anything, the win of Houchen and the loss of Street does prove that some people might hold on for dear life when the tidal wave hits. Maybe they were just, high enough to continue the tidal wave analogy. They were high enough to avoid the flood that it brought, but Street clearly wasn't. We'll see what happens come on general election night, but oh boy, general election night is gonna be very interesting indeed. So, we started being told yesterday we might win in London. That ended by losing one of the 2 Conservatives CCHQ thought voters actually liked. All those people, by the way, and those two people he's referring to were anti-ULEZ, running them on that campaign that they were going to hold Sadiq Khan to account for his ULEZ expansion. Guess what? They lost. But there you go. So what does this how whichever unlikely ministers now shoved onto the morning rounds have to cling on to? Houchen will of course be lauded, but his unwillingness to now wear his own party's rosette, accidental or not, tells a little too much. It's my party, and Yep. I think he was going to finish off with "I'll cry if I want to." Um, and bear in mind, Houchen consistently throughout all this campaign held Rishi Sunak at arm's length. There's already rumors coming out that Rishi Sunak wanted to come up and campaign for Houchen, but Houchen was constantly like, "Please, please, please, just stay away." Even when Sunak came up for the party, there was a very, very clear uncomfortableness between these two. And I have to wonder if it'll come out later that behind the scenes, there were sort of arguments between the two about support and things like that that went on. I don't know. It wouldn't shock me if that came out to be the case. So, half our council seats and, of course, 12 authorities gone. Third place behind the Liberal Democrats. Even mayoral races lost out of 12 due to the lethargic way in which the results were counted. The true extent of the pain has almost been dulled. Uh, the one more considers it, the more it seems the anti-Sunak lot stood down too early. Weren't these the results that they were hoping for? Yeah, the fight now seems to have gone out of the rebels. Jenkins, Simon Clarke, and Suella Braverman, all persistent Sunak critics, have called for a quote mythical policy changes. But what are you going to do? What policy changes is Sunak going to do that's going to somehow save them? I fail to see what he's going to do this, but I suppose we might find out if he will do that. But it's going to put Sunak in a lot of trouble. And as we've said before, he ain't a leader. He cannot um, muddle his way through this. But none have demanded his immediate resignation. The hope, at least among some, is that Sunak will own this coming loss and allow the right to swoop in the post-election. This might be the flaw in their logic that it relies on keeping their seats. That's very true. I think there is at least a hope. Maybe these losses, and you have seen Suella Braverman call for that. Sunak's got to own these losses. It'd be kind of funny if Sunak doesn't come out and continues this, "Oh, actually, we did really well" mantra, because that's going to annoy so many Tory MPs if he keeps on that way. But we'll see what happens. But it's hard to see what, say, installing Penny Mordaunt as the boat-stopping, strike-breaking, ocean-going vehicle of electoral salvation might actually achieve. As I said before, I agree with Will on that. If you put in Penny Mordaunt or pick your replacement, I suppose, what exactly are these people going to do to change the fortunes? There's nothing going to change. That's the reality. There's nothing going to change. It would rely on, of course, the HMS Sword Carrier to not only being able to appease both parties left and right, but mimic Johnson in 2019, except without vote leave, the benefit of the doubt, or even the overwhelming need to get Brexit done. And this is what I've said before. I think there is a case, as much as, I myself and others would like to sort of rejoin the EU at the moment, calling for this at this moment in time doesn't help us. If anything, it would only give ammo to the Conservatives, because they can turn around and say, you see, these people are trying to undo Brexit. Do you really want to let them in? That would give them, and especially Rishi Sunak, a lot of breathing room. And they would run and run and run on just that. And that could do a lot of damage if Labour were to do that. This is why we've always said, go do deals, repair, EU relations. We've already seen the EU recently with its would you like freedom of movement for sort of young people. Now, of course, Labour and the Conservative, Labour sort of outright said no, we're not interested, but that just goes to show you the EU is more than willing to sort of talk with us and do these negotiations, stuff that I'm constantly told, well, you can't do that. But the EU were the ones who made that initial offer. Whatever. But anyway, so let's continue. So There is, of course, nothing to stop the Prime Minister's critics from buying ad space in the Telegraph to print "We told you so" in big, friendly letters. That would be hilarious. I would not be surprised if we saw that happen this week as well. Um, Someone's going to come out and say that in some way, shape, or form. The big "We told you so" speech would not surprise me if that would happen today or at least sometime this week in response to this. But at the moment, everything's very suspiciously quiet. And as they say in the movies, it's a bit too quiet. But one doesn't sense the appetite for the crowding. As with Blackadder now accepting its own fate, there is now a widespread air of resignation. Our survey would suggest that the general assumption is that Sunak going would only make things worse. Our time is up. The big push can only be avoided for so long. In a year, the Prime Minister has brought the party precisely nowhere. Only what I've been saying since the very beginning. Even those once optimistic that he could be Johnson but competent have now lost the appetite. The rowboats have now rung hollow. We are 20 points behind, commanding under a fifth of the vote. Rwanda is a dud. Farage will return, and the voters are miserable. Why cling on? And I can guarantee you, this weekend, many Tory MPs are doing that. And I have to wonder, will there be a movement that comes forward and just go, why are we clinging on? Just call an election and just get it over with. Just don't cling on any longer. Because remember, Sunak's had over a year to try and turn this all around, and he has failed constantly. How is an extra couple of months going to change the situation? So there will be no cunning plans, notwithstanding the ability of Tory MPs to shoot themselves in the foot. And oh boy, are we going to see that this week? Like, oh boy, I am there for it. I am there for this. So it seems that Sunak has now done terrible enough to have earned the right to lead us to a very slowly towards the guns later this year at the head of his very disgruntled infantry. Our former editor once wrote of our party in a torrens of a death dance. It will be slow, painful, and a hopeless march. Well, I'm very sorry for those who lost. I can only offer nothing but sympathy, guilt, and anger. Wow. Wow. Honestly, coming from a publication like this, and coming from someone like Will, who we've seen and covered quite well, almost a couple of years now, sort of following Will and his exploits and going through his Brexit midlife crisis and many things as well at the moment. Honestly, that is the most harsh way I have ever seen him say about his own party. So wow, that is a very interesting admission there, right from Will. So I also have very little advice for those standing later this year. Currently attempting to try and defy gravity for CCHQ or for a prime minister I voted for and still admire, well, perhaps one small suggestion. Have you tried sticking your underpants on your head and pencils up your nose? Wow. Wow. Um wow. Wow, Will. Yeah, and I think this is only the first of many such things to come. Because I can guarantee you this week we are going to get something from Andy Street saying this is why I think we lost. I think he's going to put a lot of it down to the cancellation of HS2. We're going to see, of course, a lot of these very angry councillors responding as well in Conservative Home. So we're going to cover those a lot. There's going to be a lot of coping, of course, from the councillors that maybe did manage to just maybe hold on. You know, we held on to a seat. We we're winning here, guys. We're winning. It's going to be wonderful. So there you go. But so many times we have seen this on this a lot of times. And the more this happens, the more I'm just, further encouraged to see the general election and what happens and just how wonderful that night is going to be because, oh my, it's going to be glorious. So, so, so very glorious. But until then, of course, thank you very much for everyone for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.